Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. Boom, we're live. Oh my gosh. This is it, guys. This is it. Okay, this is going to be a good one. It's going to be a fun show today. I'm stoked to talk to this guest because I've known him for quite a while. How long would you say I've known you for?
Oh, ages. For 10 years?
10 years? More?
Like
I don't even know.
Yeah.
Back when I had hair and you looked exactly the way you look, which is odd. I wonder why that's the case.
No, I don't look the same. There's definitely some
No?
here.
Got more of that salty, seasoned look now?
Yeah.
Well, who is this person I'm talking to? Everyone's wondering. Marketing leader, strategist, artist, writer, speaker, and a tie designer. Fractional CMO to the stars, founder of the ABM Journal, which we will talk about, founder of Mesh Interactive, Bill Schick. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Casey. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's good to get you on here. I mean, we've known each other for a long time, and I see each other at events, the Drift Expo, and all sorts of places. It's good to finally get here in person.
Yeah, good stuff. I love what you're doing here, and listen to quite a few of your podcasts, and these are great. This is super exciting.
Well, with that answer, we can continue. We can actually do the show here. And if you'd said anything otherwise, like that's the show, everyone. But hey, let me pass you this. It's heavy, but I know you work out, so this will be good. Okay, here you go. You got it? Thor's hammer?
Oh, all right. Yeah, I got it.
That was a one-handed grab there. That was impressive, sir.
I'm worthy.
You are worthy. You are worthy of the hammer. Take Thor's hammer and smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Just set the record straight once and for all.
Yeah, this is wow. I have a lot to pull from. A lot of misconceptions out there. I think I think if I had to pick one, it's something that I think all of us as performing some function somewhere in marketing have experienced, and that is that a lot of people really believe that anybody can do marketing, and that they just actually I had a CEO tell me that one time. He's like, anybody could do what you guys do, we just don't have the time, we're doing other things. And that actually got me starting the agency. But that is one. I really don't. I think it takes a special kind of person to do the digging, be creative, and put up with the punishment that marketers deal with pretty much every day.
Wow. So this CEO was actually saying that anyone could do this, and you were just basically a body filling a seat, and they didn't have time to do it.
Yeah, and it was funny because it was on the heels of one of the most successful campaigns that company had ever done, and I was just floored because I had always seen whether it was on the creative side, whether it was looking at writing, strategy, even some of the tech stuff. I always looked at what we did there as pretty specialized, needing to pull a lot of different things together and create something that got people excited and passionate and drove them to take an action that they may not take otherwise. And I was just really, really floored. And at the time, this was a long time ago, but at the time, I was still young, I was still kind of green. And it made an impact, and it made me question things. But 20 something years later, I realized that there are a lot of people out there who just feel that really anyone could do this job. It's pretty easy, and I just don't see that as the truth.
Yeah. By the way, how's that company doing? Are they still in business?
Around.
They're around.
Yeah, they are.
Why do a lot of people think that marketing is just like filling a role?
I think it depends on who the person is who's having that perception. I think there are a couple. If I can talk to two, I think one, there's the person who doesn't really understand it. They don't really get what marketing is. They just see whatever shows up in Facebook, and they think, oh well, that looks really cool, and that's probably really easy to do. The other side of that would be more technically minded people. I would say people who are in engineering industries and development industries, and for them there's a little bit more of a formulaic view of the world. And so if I do this, then I can expect that this is going to come out of that. And it's very like if then statements. If this happens, then this happens. And that's not exactly not how marketing works. And we have this insane variable in marketing, which would be the human element, and the human element on the input side and the human element on the experience side. So there are a lot of variables there. And it's really tough to, with somebody who's got more of an engineering or more of a computer programming background, they're just amazingly brilliant in their domain, to get them to think a little bit differently about the way that people act in the decisions. We don't always make the most rational decisions. And when you put together a campaign based on, rational thinking and the data and the facts, and then it doesn't perform like, maybe it was expected, then they look at you like you messed up the formula somewhere, and that's not really the entire picture. So they really have this sense that it should be, input here, output there, and then we should have all the leads, that we would need, or all the new business that we would need, really.
Right. And it almost seems like in my experience, sometimes it's the most irrational marketing campaign ideas that you test and blow your mind. Like it's never an incremental, better, rational campaign usually, unless it involves, the rationale of just asking your buyers what's up, what are they thinking. But other than that, it's not usually the forum, the engineering circuitry board is not. It's like that's the way to get to really dry campaigns, and I don't know, people tend to be turned off by that.
Yeah, and you know what I think too is if you go down that route, what you run into is a lot of the same type of campaigns or language or positioning that other companies who do something along the same lines is what you're delivering, they're putting out there too. So if you follow that narrow path of logic only, or data only, then you would, invariably end up in the same place. And that doesn't factor in the human side, your story, why you created what you created, which, today is it's not as important, but it's almost as important as the problem you're solving. People want to know the why. They want to know the people. I mean, a lot of companies, we bump into don't have people, listed on the website, and that's what people care. That's one of the most visited pages on a website is the about us, and not the about us like here's our product, here's another way of talking about our product, but right. The about us in who we are as people, in human beings. So it really is, again, the two people who we typically bump into or we hear this from are the people who don't understand marketing and the function that it does. They just see stuff show up, but they don't know how we got there. And then the other group who thinks very almost binary, you put this in, that out, and it should be that simple, really. It's just a logic problem, and it's not.
Right. Because if it was, we'd all be doing it.
Anyone could do it, right? Anybody could do it. This would be an easy job. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Like I could see them being, we just haven't deduced the correct formula yet. And
yeah, I mean, I exactly. I worked with a company a while ago that had tapped out on one of its product lines. It literally felt that it was selling all it could into the market and by the numbers. And in looking at it and putting in a couple of variables and a couple of wacky things, they ended up with a double sales Q3 over Q4. And they were shocked because they had run the data and the numbers, and they said, we just can't sell any more of this, which is a crazy place to be. But if they had just stuck to the story, that would have gone nowhere.
Right. The same old binary thinking. Now this drove you to just peace out and eventually found your own agency. Is that the path we should all take if you encounter this? Or would you recommend people, how, especially when you deal with clients or customers that think this, maybe you don't, but how do you change their thinking here? And can you?
So, yeah, I think what we can't expect right out of the gate that they are suddenly going to become empaths, or they're suddenly going to understand the role of psychology or behavior in the decision-making process. It's very much and I'll focus again more on the people who understand and view it in a certain way versus the people who just don't understand at all. That's a simple, generally a simple problem of education. On the other side, on maybe the more technical side, we have to align ourselves with them. We have to come over to their side. We have to speak their language, and then we have to start making them aware of all of these other things that are just not factoring in. I would not say that starting your own agency is the answer to this. If you're wrestling with this problem, starting an agency doesn't solve it. It actually might make it something that you deal with more. Now, instead of just one boss who might not completely get it, now you have 15 bosses that have varying degrees.
Now I had to say that same conversation 15 times. Right. That's a good call.
Yeah, exactly. The cool thing is you start developing tools. You start looking at ways that, rather than try and convince you that I'm right, or you should be looking at this, start looking and aligning yourself to the things that they are. In one of those stories, I had sort of beaten my head against the wall for a year or two, trying to convince and cajole and really sell the idea of marketing. And what it took was saying, okay, what is going to get on their radar? And that is sales. If we do something, and that seems kind of obvious, if we just get sales, then we have their ear. But in some cases, you just can't even get some major balls rolling because they don't believe in it. They don't understand it. They don't trust it. They feel what they feel. Mm-hmm. So aligning with whatever it is that person who is holding the purse strings and deciding what we can and can't do, getting alignment there, being able to present them with data or a view that they respect above their own. So coming in our role, a lot of times as marketers, we don't necessarily get the respect. It may be because of their perception of the industry or the job. It might be that they've had a couple of experiences with marketers. I mean, every industry has people in it who, create trouble for other people in the industry. True. So, there are a variety. You have to kind of figure out why they have the view that they have, and then find the tools that will get them trusting you, then getting them to know you, and then getting them in alignment. And I find that the voice of the customer is huge in many cases, not every cases, but when you can get the customer to speak to them and say, hey, I know you're talking about this thing over here, but why we really bought the product or why we really bought from you is this thing over here. That can go a long way in opening up their thinking to supporting other things.
Wow. The idea of finding data or a view they respect above their own, like something that you were not trying to twist their arms. You like go meet them where they're at, and then find out the things that they respect and the numbers they trust, and then work that. And then the one you highlight, the idea of the voice of the customer. If the customer said X, and they're our favorite customer, like who might argue with that? Like you can't argue. Well, I don't know what they're talking about. Well, cool. I talked to 3 of them. They all said the same thing.
Right.
It's irrefutable.
That's exactly right. And what, one way to look at that is, it's not just one customer, it's a handful of customers. But starting with getting whoever that person is in that role to define who they want to buy more of their, if we could sell to this, we get into ABM, so the ideal customer, the ideal company profile. But if we could just get more of this type of account, we would be in such great shape. I mean, how many marketers have had that conversation? Who's our ideal customer? That's like 101. It's the first question you answer. And it's interesting to hear not just who the ideal customer is, but why. What makes them the ideal customer? and digging into that and getting the person that you're trying to get on your side on marketing to define that and frame that based on customers they have today, and make that real and put that, codify that, and then use that to go then to those customers and say, why did you buy it? And removing the company from the process too, because sometimes if that person is too close to the organization, they'll just parrot the sales talking points. They'll just feed back to you the thing that you convince them on.
And
And
it's not
if
true
you
though.
can,
They're just giving you, it's like, that's the logical answer, but really we want to know the irrational reason why they bought.
right, you want to get into, the whole piece of what led you up to the moment where you discovered us, where we got in front of you with an ad, or you read a blog post, or you did that interactive video thing. What got you to that point? And we want to hear that language, because those aren't sales talking points. And they go beyond pain points. It's the context and all the band-aids that they tackle, because they don't wake up one morning and say, oh, I have a problem, let me go find you guys and buy, and oh, we have an ideal customer. There are a lot of things they do along the way. And when you can paint that picture for the person who's created this thing, a founder or somebody in a C-suite, and say, look, we have this amazing thing, it solves a problem. And rather than meet somebody right in the moment where they've woken to the fact that they're searching, if we get to them before that conversation sooner, that becomes more compelling, and instantly you're in a different position than you were before all of this happened.
Right. Yeah. And I guess I've never really thought about how powerful that is to be able to, especially when you think of an owner or a founder or the CEO, they, especially when they've been tied to it for many years and they kind of had those entrenched mindsets. They know a lot about their customers. They may not have asked that question to them about the why, maybe even the follow on, or why that was important. That we met them all at the trade show, but why did they go to the trade show? Or like, but why did they choose you at the trade show? And then like what happened here is messy, but like to be able to give them that knowledge of, actually almost everyone says they really, they sign up with us because we had fun on the first phone call, or the guy wears great ties, right? It was like those sort of goofy, weird things. The sales guy was just so cool. I just wanted to buy from him, like it's those other
Yeah.
things that really can open up doors.
Yeah, I mean, 9 times out of 10, it is the people thing. So, one of our clients is one of the top 3 tech companies in their space in the world. And when we went through this exercise with them to speak directly with their customers to find out why they bought, customers kept coming back and said, look, the top 3, they're kind of all doing the same flavor of the same type of thing. There are little details and little nuances, but honestly, for what we're bringing them in to do, they all can do some version of that. And the reason we bought from this company is the pre-sales process, all of the prep work that the pre-sales team did leading up to that final piece and signing on the line. So it's all the human side, prepping my team for the transformation, to use an overly used word, but prepping, the team that put together the document, put together the roadmap, put together all of that before the purchase. It's a pretty expensive purchase. So they have a team geared up for that. I mean, they're not, selling copiers, but not that there's anything wrong with selling copiers, but they're not, they weren't focused on the human element, and they weren't focused on that part of the business. I think sales learned over time what was needed to get those buyers ready. And through that, because that, from the point of starting the conversation, there's this dead zone that happens between like a lead opportunity to the sale. There's a lot of stuff that buyers, at least in where we play, that buyers have to do. They have to go in and they have to do internal selling. They have to make business cases. They have to ramp up teams and prep them for, whatever this purchase is, education, whatever it looks like. And sometimes they're just left on their own. And this team created a ton of content and assets and training and providing guidance and coaching on how to get set up for that. So there really is sometimes, again, back to the if I build it, they will come mentality.
Mm-hmm.
I built this really amazing thing. It's so logically that it solves all of these problems. A lot of times it's people who kind of get in the way or activate that process.
Yeah, it'd be such a mistake to, and then people do this to, it's these features. I'm sure this new feature we added was the thing that made the difference. And it's like, no, maybe it was the fact that you held their hand through this really scary process, pre-sales, like you described, that made them feel comfortable. And that was really, I mean, in doubling down on that and understanding that is really your edge, not that widget you added or the extra discount or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's tough too. Again, on the marketing side, sales typically holds pretty tight strings on their client relationships. So getting to a point where they're willing to give you access to that,
Yeah.
they have these personal relationships. They don't want anyone coming in and stirring the pot and creating a problem where there isn't one. So often getting them to open up their book and say, okay, you can talk to this person or you can talk to this person, and really get into the why. They don't want to create a problem where there isn't one, and they see more potential, and I think with good cause, for opening up a can of worms where there might not otherwise be. So marketers have to come up with creative ways for ferreting out that information from the customers or the buyers. And we don't necessarily need to just go to our ideal customers. We can look out at companies today and say, we know they would be really great buyers, and we use that to build ABM campaigns. But there is and you did another podcast recently about doing assessments. I think, was it Tom?
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah. So really, really great. And if you guys haven't listened to that one, I think it's going to be a couple weeks ago now. I don't know what your timing is, but
yeah, it's number 220.
there's
Tom Hessen.
yeah, some really good stuff there. And assessments play a really great role in that process. But I think the point he made was that marketers don't know about the prospect. They don't know about the customer. And part of that is figuring that out and learning that even when we can't get necessarily the support we want or getting access to the customers like sales would give us. And there are different ways that as a marketer, we can get the data in addition to those assessments, doing some of those quizzes, putting out feelers or lures, as we call them, and get that information to then inform the type of campaigns and strategy that you do going forward.
Right. Now you mentioned ABM just now, and I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about that because there's a lot of buzz around it, but like getting to the real practical, like do you practice ABM, and is it a big deal? Is it a small percentage of what you do? And what's your take on it? And then maybe we get to some like best practices.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there.
I mean, you wrote a whole journal, so I guess we can't unpack the entire journal here, but
yeah, so a little bit of background. I've been applying principles of ABM for 20 years. We didn't call it ABM. We called it just doing what it took to get the business in the door. And now there is, there's the label now, and there's a whole, discipline. But I think it needs to be a component to every marketing group. And I feel like there's a stat out there that 80-something% of marketers have ABM as part of what they're doing.
I got to call BS on that stat though, right? I mean, do you think that many, I think 80% of marketers would like to be doing ABM.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think that it's on the radar. And you'll see too with agencies, you'll see, hey, we're going to run a campaign and remarket, and we're going to call that ABM. And I think that it's just not what it is. So I think that we're in the kind of the maturation of the messaging of the value of ABM, but the actual nuts and bolts, applied practice of it, there are plenty of companies that it looks really good. The promise of it sounds amazing. Well, just pick the companies that you want business to, and then target them with, specific, really expensive advertising, and just, focus like a laser. And there's certainly more to it than that. We're a digital agency, but we've found that adding upfront a physical component to the program, which scares people. And we're in the time of data. Everything's data driven, and when you send somebody something physical, it's really hard to track that, or it's tough to prove ROI. And how do we plug that into all the digital pieces? And as a primarily a digital agency, it's weird to be talking about physical stuff. But we do find that things like that work. So having been through the unofficial experience of backing into ABM campaigns out of need, not out of, hey, it's the cool thing to talk about. I stumbled across ITSMA, the organization that coined the ABM label, and went through their certification to just really get, fill in the gaps. When you learn and you work through something yourself, you always wonder what you don't know, or what you're missing, or maybe what you could be doing differently. So having gone through that certification, it filled in a lot of the gaps and the missing pieces for me. And there is a process. You can't do just part of it. You really need to go through each of the steps. And again, not just digitally speaking and running, remarketing or retargeted ads to a group, but actually engaging with that target account with intent. So there's a lot to unpack there, but I don't know that I answered your question.
Well, no, I'm just even at the abmjournal.com. So it sounds like you certainly got the gaps filled in enough to even then put content out there to people. Where do you think the biggest gap, maybe the gaps that you remember for yourself, or just the biggest gaps where people, do you see a sort of common misconceptions around ABM, and, maybe fill in the gaps for us on here?
I think, one of the gaps for me is how do I take the idea of ABM? Like it's easy to understand. It really is. You decide who your best accounts are going to be. You create a list of who those might be. You create a list of who the contacts are at those contacts, and then you target them, and you present them with content and advertising, and whatever you can put together as far as that journey goes. And that sounds really great, but how does that really become how do you decide who your ideal accounts are? And that's what we were talking about a little bit earlier. How do you figure out who those are? And how do you then, once you have that, decide, are we going in front of them with email, or are we going to get targeted display ads on a particular news site or industry channel? Or how do we take the theory and the understanding and turn it into practical application? And for each company in each industry, just like any marketing campaign, it's a little bit different. There is the 85 to 90% of those campaigns all kind of run a similar flow, and it's that 10 to 15% that requires the vision, the creativity, the understanding of the market that we talked about earlier, and having that and putting it into play, but also having the runway to experiment and explore with it. Again, you go back to I put this in and I take this out. I get this out on the other side. How come anyone can't just sit down and do marketing? It takes unpacking a strategy and even a predefined campaign. There are a lot of tools out there that give you kind of a roadmap, or they give you the customer journey and say, just run this type of campaign. The work is in making that work for your business, your buyer, and your particular brand.
Got it. Yeah, really taking it out of the theory side and making it practical. Do you have any favorite ways? Because I feel like, even personally, I've done a lot of work on the targeting. I understand it doesn't have to be perfect to start out with, But then one of the areas where I get a little mushy on is like, okay, you got a list. We want to go after like, okay, how do we go after them? Is it just
Mhm.
we're just cold calling a select list instead of the regular list? That doesn't sound very good. Um, we're sending them all chocolates. Like, how do you take your list? How do you go from list to like that next step? What is that next step after the list?
It is really understanding the buyer. It's similar to any other campaign in that you're really wrapping your head around where do they live, how do they spend their time,
Yeah.
where do they get their information, where can you connect with them, and then doing something different, doing something that they're not going to expect, because you don't want to invest all the time and the energy in creating an ABM campaign and then feeding those assets in the same place all of the other noise is happening. You have to
Right.
come from an angle that's unexpected. So, with one of our clients doing a campaign, we went to a big I wish I could show it to you, but we're under an NDA. But it's a tech sale, but it was a big wooden box filled with some very cool things and very personal things. And they had a really great result. I mean, it drove millions of dollars of opportunity for them, and it was very targeted. We're not talking about 1,000 company contact list. It was, I don't know, 200, and doing something that they're just not going to expect, but is in line with kind of their view of their work reality.
Right.
I wish I could be more specific than that, but look for not the same place that everybody else is, because you're putting a lot of effort into being more of the mix of the noise versus, hey, I was really surprised that I heard somebody do like alma mater socks. I sent
Yeah.
somebody a six pack and some socks from their college, and it just got their attention, and that was all that they needed to break through and start the conversation.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it's just crazy stuff. I mean, we sent out those little Funko Pop dolls to some people,
Yep.
and they were like, "This is nobody's ever sent us this," and that's what you want to get to. You want to get to a nobody's ever, and then fill in that blank. But it has to relate to them. It can't be crazy for crazy's sake. It has to be relevant to the conversation.
So like clever, right? Because I could send you root beer, but if there's no reason for root beer,
Right.
it's nice, but like, but to your point, like socks of the school you went to, that's one you can even discover off of LinkedIn information. That's pretty smart. And I guess
Yeah.
even the idea of the wooden box filled with treasures that relate to you, I guess I just pulled up your LinkedIn. I'm like, if I was going to send you a wooden box with treasures, I don't know if I necessarily know anything about you I mean, how do you, I mean, I can send you college socks, but, just for, is it more than just LinkedIn, or how do you, because I think the
Yeah.
challenge for me is they're on your list. We got to get to really know them and their problems and who they are as a person so that we can message them, but like, we don't know anything about them other than they're on
Yeah.
our list.
So I'll give you an example of something that worked really well.
Okay.
So there are a couple of channels that, I mean, well, obviously there's a ton of social channels out there,
Yeah.
and it's investigating, it's putting up some parameters. If you're it's the right effort for the right audience. So if you have a list of 1,000 contacts, you're not doing this type of work. But for companies that are selling, it's a $1 million piece of capital equipment. It's a $10 million over 5-year, software license. It's
Yeah.
whatever it looks like. You have to look at what is the right. A lot of these companies aren't looking to sell 1,000 new seats. They need to get 27 new accounts by the end of the year. That's manageable. Their sales team can tackle that. It drives the right amount of revenue, and you're not wasting time and resources on 973 companies that
Yeah.
are never going to buy from you. So with something like this, I'm not talking about doing 1,000. I'm talking about, hey, let's target 200, and if we convert 20 or 30, we hit our numbers, and you know, we have a ton of data now. We've learned so much. So there's a lot to be done there. But when you're dealing with companies on that level, first we do it in waves. So it's not a pull the trigger and boom, the entire campaign goes out. But it's looking at their social footprint. So you know, finding that person on LinkedIn, and often it's not a far leap to their Twitter handle if they have it, and looking in there, and you're doing discovery. You're trying to find where they are. You know, are they publicly available on Facebook? Typically, you can kind of find them there. Maybe over on Instagram. You're out there looking for something that really resonates with this person, and it doesn't feel like, oh, I went over to Twitter, I found them, their last tweet was this, and I'm just going to run with that. You know,
Yeah, like you have Chex
really
Mix and Mr. Peanut on yours, so I'm going to send you some snacks, I guess.
Right. And you could start a conversation that way. It might be that easy. But what you want to do is you really want to wake somebody up from the typical stuff and have it not feel gimmicky, have it feel personal. We did a campaign where we dug up personally branded hashtags through people's social media channels. And then we created custom t-shirts with their own hashtag and artwork on those t-shirts. And, you know, every time they said, this is absolutely amazing that you would create, you know, take something that typically you'd mass produce and you would do a one-off. And this is so much easier to do today with technology. You can print a one-off t-shirt in, you know, an hour, if that.
Yeah.
But the idea that it's unusual, it's personal, it's relevant. I think that people talk about personal a lot, but still there's the, all right, insert first name here, insert, you know, company name, and then the rest of it is all just about me. And there's too much of that. So personal, really driving down into the things that are relevant. And again, bringing it back to business. This is all really good on the front end, in making that initial connection, that, you know, initial piece, the start of the relationship. But it's getting into, okay, how do we drive that? How do we turn that into a relevant and valuable conversation that gets them into being a customer? Because if we don't turn those people into customers, we could have the coolest, most creative personal campaign ever, and we feel good, but we wasted a bunch of money there.
Right. Interesting. Huh. The fun part is we get to be creative in this mode, right? We're getting out of the serving 1,000 people when we're serving 25 or 5 or whatever smaller number it is. You can do more of you do less of the crazy mind-numbing quant stuff, and now you're getting back to the humanity of it all, back to the very first point you had, which was this is more irrational. You get to be more irrational. Hey, my new book, ABM is irrational, which doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
I like it.
I
like it.
Yeah.
But it's got to be fun. There's got to be a fun.
What's that?
There's got to be a fun component. There's got to be a fun, creative component to it. I mean, why else would we do this if we're not enjoying it at some level? So
Right. Well, where does this progress to? What are you seeing coming around the bend? Are the buyers changing? Is this process changing? Is there a next ABM, or what do you see down the road coming around?
I think that, and something I hope to see, is that we narrow the focus. We stop casting a net out to 1,000 or excuse me, or 10,000 people, and then saying, hey, we did something really targeted, and that's ABM. I really think, and it takes a lot of trust internally to invest, a significant portion of your marketing budget to targeting 250 companies if we haven't proven on some level that this can really work. So I think that what we'll see is campaigns that cast a wide net, that are not strictly there. I mean, if we convert those to customers, great. New customers is always, everybody's happy about that. but those campaigns are more for let's get data to inform the campaign that we use to target 200, 300 ideal customers for an ABM campaign. So getting, stacking, we do micro campaigns now where it's literally for each stage of the journey. This is just a small campaign, and the purpose is to, whatever the stage is, accomplish that and then hopefully move them into the next stage. So in this case, putting a broader campaign out there so that you can, rather than have that big funnel that just comes all the way down, you kind of have this like really short funnel. And the purpose there is to get information and data and work to just get right into a really, really targeted campaign. So, 3 months of setup and running that feeler campaign to lead into, because a lot of companies, they don't have good data to start these campaigns. They don't know. The question is, it comes to, I just don't know. It goes back to that, the conversation before, in that I don't know enough about my customer to make good decisions and make recommendations that people will believe. They want to see the data. What data do I get? And how do I get that? And I think those initial feeler campaigns stacked on top of an ABM campaign can really help with that.
Yeah, more of a combined effort and not just out there by itself. I could see the whiplash of thinking you're doing ABM, it doesn't work, or it takes longer than you think, and then not doing it, sort of going back in the other direction, going back to the mass marketing approach. So I imagine, you think some of that will be, I guess everyone will try new things and some will fail and some will succeed. And the ones listening to this podcast will do well.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely some experimentation there. On the other side, so that's on the front end. Yeah. In the actual ABM campaign, a lot of what's happening right now is retooling of other assets. It's let me run this campaign and highly target 10,000 users and then put another white paper in front of them. Yeah. And we've said this a million times, we're white papered out. We were white papered out 4 or 5 years ago. And now we're really at that limit, but we're putting something else on the front end of that and hoping that plays out. And just like with the assessment that was covered in the last podcast, there are tools that, it's not that content doesn't work in this context, it's that there's burnout on the customer side, and we need to get them engaged. We need to get them interacting. We need to get them, experiences that teach them. And so putting together things like a quiz or an assessment, or like Netflix did this choose your own adventure video. I forget the name of it. I don't know if you watched it
a couple years
ago, but yeah. So that, I think, is really inspirational, because now you're bringing in a relatively passive audience who is there for entertainment, and you're getting them to experience it. And looking at something like that, and we've created a couple of these interactive videos. So instead of driving a prospect, even ABM, into a funnel where you have a 45-minute webinar video pre-recorded, it's ungated. What you do is you slice that up and you work into that, for some of our clients, like a patient story or a customer story or other video assets of value. And then you start getting some of the data. You get them self-selecting by making choices and choosing which path in the video they want to take. So, in the case of one of our clients, there is an industry kind of struggle right now. They deal in cardiovascular products, and in some cases, when there's open heart surgery, do they close back up the natural material around the heart, or do they kind of just leave it alone? And some doctors think you should, and some doctors think you shouldn't. Depending on a doctor's perspective on how they treat that surgery, it actually changes the sales conversation with the rep with that doctor when they go in. So rather than wait until you're in the room and you're spending time. Okay, now I realize I'm talking to somebody who doesn't close that up. I have to have this conversation. Putting that kind of choice in the front end of a video, so you only show them information based on their personal context. One, you're giving them a more personal experience without putting their name in a variable. But two, that click and that information can be put into a Salesforce. It can be put into the record so that the salesperson can say, okay, they're a closer, or they leave it open, and now I can start the conversation there. And you can do that with any variety of variables along the sales process, and you can really start the conversation way ahead of where you would do that without.
It sounds fun. It sounds like I can't wait to have more and more of this. I'd love to have choose your own adventure content and, like, again, getting back to the fun of it. We don't want to see your 30-page white paper. Even the term white paper just sounds so scary and terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And even with that, I mean, who does, I mean, we all have that graveyard on our desktop, right? It's that folder of stuff we download and we're going to read it, and we never do. And we, it's unfortunate. We really want people to consume that and be educated and learn things and have this epiphany that they should buy from us. But that's just not the normal behavior. That's a logical, if I put this in, I will get this out, but it doesn't account for the human side of that. So you have to do things. The information's still good, the content's still good, the idea and the thinking around it is still good. It's the operational, it's the human side, the interactive side of something like that. It's just so static, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, static is lame. Maybe in the future everything's not static, and then people will be like, man, bring me back to the days of static content, all this interaction. Oh my goodness. But I don't know, sign me up, man. This sounds good. Sounds exciting.
Good stuff.
Well, my question to you now is, like, who are you? Like, how do you know all these things? How have you experienced all this? Can you take me back in time, like back in the day, little Bill growing up? Like, where'd you grow up? Were you local to New Hampshire, or where did you get your start?
No, good question. Thanks for that. I grew up in Vermont. I was born in southern Vermont, and then we moved up to central Vermont.
Well, that explains a lot about what I know about you now. Vermont. Got it.
Yeah.
Ben
and I really came from, oh, sorry, you go ahead.
No. I'm making fun of you in Vermont. I'm New Hampshire, and New Hampshire makes fun of Vermont. It happens.
There were plenty to make fun of. And for me, it was interesting because I really grew up with two really different families. One was very, salt of the earth, military Marine family, growing up. And then the other side came from, my grandparents came from Europe, escaping, World War II and living in Manhattan. So having those really two different cultures, even within the family, really created, an interesting environment. And, a lot of music, a lot of art, a lot of writing, a lot of creating. I think I started playing guitar when I was 4, and wrote a first very small computer program when I was 8, and constantly writing and drawing and creating all these things. And even in choosing a path in college, and I don't know how many people really know going into college what they want to do, but it's like, do I do art or music, or do I get into computers? And I pursued design because I could see a lot of all of those things in design. It wasn't just ink on paper. There's a writing component. There's this cool technology coming out called the internet, and I'm old, but there was a lot going on, and so there was a promise there. And for me, I've been working with other, agency partners. Typically, an agency founder comes from a discipline. They're really big into technology, or they're a copywriter, or they're a creative ideas person. And for me, it hasn't ever been, about one thing. It's I'm distractible, but always looking at the creative side, always looking at the communication, the language side of it, and the technology. How can we bring all that together? And and make something that would be better than if you didn't. And that's actually how we came up with the name Mesh, which is bringing those three things together in a way that hopefully is more effective and engaging and fun than if you didn't. If you focus just on the design, or you just wrote really good copy, or it was just the data, it was just the technology. When you bring those three things together, it's just really crazy magical things happen.
It sounds like you've been doing that your entire life, just creating, whether it's the technical
Yeah,
side or the physical. Yeah.
yeah, it's been really really fun. It's challenging at times, because it's not, sometimes it's not very tangible. It's not a, hey, I made a thing, I made a widget, I solved a problem. Sometimes it's just about creating.
Yeah.
But in a perfect world, it's always there's always something new at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that variety and the creation creates that variety. And I didn't know you had these different influences when you're young. I didn't know there's a Marine nearby that was, so did you grow
Yeah,
up in a
my
military family part of the
grandfather,
time?
yeah, my grandfather, he was a mason, and I remember driving around through New Hampshire and Vermont, and my mom would just kind of roll down the window of our green wood panel station wagon and be
Sure.
like, look, your grandfather helped build that building over there, or helped build that sort of thing. And that coupled with sort of that pragmatic New
Yeah.
Englander, coupled with sort of the world view of art and music. I mean, my other grandfather was a conductor for the Metropolitan Opera, and just having
Jeez.
those two worlds collide really created some I was really lucky. I didn't feel like it at the time, but as a kid, I was really lucky to have all of that available to me.
Yeah, the contrast too between, and when you said Mason, I didn't really, you meant like Mason, like actually building those things. So to
Yeah.
have now both are creating just in different ways. It's really interesting. One is
Yeah.
that tangible building you can point at. The other one is the most amazing concert people have ever heard 2 weekends ago. That it's not
Yes.
physical. Maybe you have a program from it, but you don't. It was a moment. It was an experience. So the
It's an
experience
experience and
versus
a memory.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
the memory. Yeah, so those two things, one, practical hands-on making something that's of value, and on the other hand, joy and entertainment and a memory and an experience
Yeah,
really sticks with you.
man. Well, I have a hypothetical for you. I may or may not have a time machine down here in Nashua, which is only a few minutes away here. So,
I've
COVID's
seen
all
it.
done. You come use the time machine. It's in the backyard, and you get to go back in time and see yourself right after school and
Mhm.
graduate. You're off to the world, starting your career. If you could go back and talk to Bill then, what kind of advice would you give yourself?
I think that Bill then was worried about all of the bad things that could happen. Making I there was a part of me that always just wanted to have my own business, whether it was design or being an illustrator. At one point, I wanted to draw comic books. Whatever it ended up being, there was always a really kind of deep seated fear of taking that risk,
Yeah,
and there won't be money, or there won't be all the things that won't be. And
right.
I pursued some more safe, not exactly traditional, but more safe avenues. And I would go back and say, it works out, and take the risk as opposed to don't. Make the jump, and you will find a way. It will work out, and that's what I would say today.
Yeah, that's cool. Just give yourself a little reassurance that it's going to be good. You're going to be fine. Yeah, I hear
Yeah,
you.
I mean, think about the things think about the things we worry about. The
Yeah,
irrational, like it feels rational right now, and right now is crazy time. But now might not be the best time to think about it. But think about all of the things we feel are so big and so looming, and so the most important. They seem like the most monumental issues, and then we look back 6 months or a year, and we're
yeah,
like, it works out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the younger I am, I remember just being like growing up, just being anxious about a lot of things, just like, oh my gosh, like the homework, did I the test, like and when we look back now, it's kind of a good example of like now I like kids should not ask me about school because I'm like, nah, I don't know what to tell you. College, go to college,
Right.
maybe, I don't know. But like now I think back, like, oh man, all the worried nights I had pulling off late projects and stuff in school when it's like,
Mhm.
well, there's another thing that was happening behind the scenes, which eventually would be make it successful. And it's like, I don't know, what is that? We can see a couple feet in front of us, I guess, and we don't have the context
Yeah.
of knowing that it's going to be good.
We don't know. We just don't know. And what it is really, I think it's a little bit maturity, experience. It's surviving that thing that I was so afraid of. You survive it, and it's not
Yeah.
gonna. There was, I forget who it is, but there was he's an army guy or a SEAL guy, and he does a lot of talks. I think he wrote a book, and
David Goggins.
he maybe, but his thing is people ask him like, how come you're not afraid of this thing happening in business? And he's like, well, I went over there and people were trying to kill me, and that's not going to happen here, so I'm not afraid.
Right.
And I probably stumbled across that 5 years ago, and since then it's that, I mean, that seems kind of weird, but that was really eye-opening for me. Like, that thing I'm really afraid of is like, if I say the wrong thing in the meeting, or if I do that, they're literally not going to kill you. So, you can kind of put the fear off to the side. Is a job on the line? Or these numbers? There are things to have varying degrees of concern about, but, not fear.
Yeah. I just feel like think good creativity comes from that necessarily as it does from, I don't know, restriction. You can like restrict yourself and then get some creativity out of that. But fear tends to, it's like, it's cold out, all your body parts start shutting down. It's not like
Lock up. Yeah.
yeah, survival mode is not your most creative time. I mean, it's the warm shower. I don't think the best creativity ideas come from the cold shower, right? Cold shower, you're like, I heard this on the internet and it's supposed to help me out. This really sucks. When can I get out? But then the hot shower, you're like, oh, maybe I should open a company that does X, Y, and Z.
Right. There was somebody who had a post about starting the day off with a cold shower, because that's the worst thing that's going to happen to them. And if I can take a cold shower, I can survive anything. And I'm like, are you insane? That
Yeah.
is exactly not how I would ever want. I tried, I think it was like 5 seconds. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
I have other things that I can put in the way of my day and say, if I overcome this, I'm going to be all right. But not a cold shower. That is, unless it's a really hot day and then it's like a minute, but no, that's
Right. And we're in New
it's
England, so
not.
just getting out of bed is usually cold anyways. So there it
Right.
is.
Right. And we're getting into that. I'm looking out the window. We're getting into that weather. Today's nice, but we
Yeah.
are getting into that chilly time.
It's getting there. They call it like false fall. Like, oh, it's fall. No, it's summer. Oh, now it's like getting into false winter where you're like, oh, it's cold. Then it'll be warm out again and it'll be
Mhm.
cold. It's a mind
Turn
game.
on the heat. One day is cold, and then I come in and it's sweltering because the heat's on
Sweltering.
and it's hot.
Wearing the parka to the
Exactly.
office. Do you still find time to play
Mhm.
guitar a lot?
Not this week. But yeah, in fact, I just actually bought another new guitar, and I'm going to be making time for it. But yeah, I'm one of the tiny silver linings about this period is it's given me more time with the kids and more time to do some music stuff, and that's been really nice.
Yeah, I found the same thing too. I'm supposed to be this hiking mountaineer guy, and I hadn't done much prior to COVID lately because I'd been busy. And this has
Hmm.
given me a chance to say, well, I can't really socialize the way I'd want to right now, but I can go to the mountains. And it's, yeah, to your point, it really has given me a chance to get back out and do those things. I don't think I will lose those after COVID too. I think I'll try to maintain that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to get out and getting out with the kids now too. I mean, but if we weren't in this, the kids would be in class all day and we'd be, working our butts off. And now it's all right, let's, get your work done. I'll get my work done and let's go hike a trail or something.
Yeah.
And It's just, it is, I think there's a lot of focus on, and understandably, on the things that we're dealing with right now.
Sure.
But we have to remember to take it, it's presenting us with opportunities as well. And we should take advantage of those, because we're not going to be able to again, well, probably not going to be able to again.
Yeah, it's like a hard reset on the Nintendo system. It gives us there is a silver lining to it for sure. Good stuff, man. Hey, where can people connect with you? Connect with you, the ABM Journal, all these things. Mesh.
Yeah, so I'm over on LinkedIn. I don't even remember what my LinkedIn profile is. It was I don't know. So over on LinkedIn, Twitter, Bill Schick. Those are probably the two best places to check us out on meshagency.com. And you mentioned the abmjournal.com as well. That's a great spot for news on what's going on in ABM. And we're actually expanding that to some really unique data and information on where ABM is going and what's really working and maybe not so.
Excellent. Good stuff, man. Thanks for coming on here. This has been fun. What did you think?
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily as good as meeting up with the common man and getting some beer and some appetizers, but next best thing,
whiskey.
The COVID time,
Whiskey. Definitely whiskey for me.
Oh, yep. Just whiskey for you?
I'm definitely more of a whiskey drinker. I'll have the occasional beer, yeah, but definitely old fashioned over here.
Old fashioned. So, here we go.
Yeah.
Well, then, were you dressed for the part? Absolutely. I guess I am dressed for the beer right now, so it's all good.
Absolutely.
Cool,
good stuff, man. Thank you.
Well, yeah, and for the people listening, if you learned something, then share this episode with someone else. And I know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes front and back from what I've been learning here. So share this with someone else. LinkedIn's a great place for it. You put your takeaways at the top. You link to it in the comments. Tag myself, tag Bill. We'll start a conversation. We'll get some things going. And that's how you do thought leadership. And again, Bill, awesome to see you again, man. Let's hang out.
Thanks. Thank you. Talk soon, all right?
You bet. For those listening, it's been the Hardcore Marketing Show. This has been a fun time. We'll catch you all next time.